Final confrontation. Armed soldiers breaching chamber to find blood-covered subjects, moving with jerky, unnatural motions, still alive despite fatal wounds. I woke up Saturday morning to Marcus shaking my shoulder. "Jake, you need to see this," he said quietly. I followed him outside, where the others were gathered around our fire pit. The ashes from our fire had been scattered, and there were tracks in the dirt around our campsite. But these weren't normal animal tracks. They were roughly human-shaped but much larger, with what appeared to be cloven hooves instead of feet. The tracks circled our entire campsite multiple times, coming within feet of our tents. "What kind of animal makes tracks like that?" Sarah asked. None of us had an answer. David suggested they might be from a large deer that had been walking on its hind legs, which would explain the human-like gait. But even he seemed unconvinced by his own explanation. We spent the morning exploring the area around our campsite, but found no other signs of whatever had visited us during the night. The forest seemed normal during daylight. Birds singing, squirrels chattering, the peaceful sounds of nature. By afternoon, we had almost convinced ourselves that we had overreacted to what was probably just an unusual but harmless encounter with local wildlife. We spent the day hiking and swimming in the stream, and by evening our spirits were back up. But as darkness fell, the sounds returned. This time they were different. Not just the crashes of something moving through the forest, but actual vocalizations. Deep, guttural sounds that seemed almost like attempts at human speech, and they were getting close. We built up our fire higher than the night before and gathered closely around it. The sounds continued for hours, sometimes seeming to come from directly behind the trees at the edge of our clearing. At one point, Tony thought he saw something moving between the trees, a tall, dark shape that seemed to be watching us. "Should we pack up and leave?" Jessica asked. We discussed it, but decided to stay. It was the middle of the night. We were 4 miles from the car, through difficult terrain, and we had no idea what was out there. Better to stay together around the fire until morning. Around 3 a.m., the sounds stopped again, but this time, the silence was even more unsettling than the noise had been. That Sunday morning brought a discovery that changed everything. David had gotten up early to start coffee and immediately called the rest of us out of our tent. About 50 feet from our campsite, carved into the bark of a large tree, was a message. "I know what you are." The carving was deep and fresh, clearly made during the night while we slept. But what disturbed us most was that it was carved at eye level for someone much taller than any of us. "We're leaving," Marcus said immediately. "Whatever's out here, it's not just an animal." We began packing up camp quickly, but as we worked, I started to notice something strange about the group dynamics. David, who had been the most enthusiastic about the trip, seemed oddly calm about the message carved in the tree. Tony, normally talkative and joking, had become quiet and withdrawn. And there was something about the way Sarah was acting that I couldn't put my finger on. She kept volunteering to help with tasks that took her away from the group. And when I tried to talk to her privately, she seemed distracted and uninterested. By noon, we had everything packed and were ready to start the hike back to the car. But as we prepared to leave, David made an unexpected suggestion. "Why don't we take a different route back?" he said. "I saw another trail on the map that might be more scenic." "Different route," Marcus said. "We're trying to get out of here, not sightsee." But David was insistent, and eventually we agreed to follow his lead. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, despite never having been here before. The new trail was rougher and less defined than the one we had taken in. Several times we had to stop and figure out which direction to go, and I started to notice that David kept looking back at us as he led, as if he was checking to make sure we were still following. After about 2 hours of hiking, We came to a clearing that none of us remembered from our original route. In the center of the clearing was a structure, a crude shelter made from branches and animal skins. "This wasn't on any map," Marcus said. David walked toward the shelter with what seemed like familiarity. "Let's just check it out quickly," he said. That's when I realized what had been bothering me about David all day. His voice sounded slightly different, the same words, but with a subtle change in tone and inflection that I hadn't noticed until that moment. "David," I said carefully, "how did you know about this place?" He turned to look at me, and for just a second, I saw something in his eyes that didn't belong there, something wild and predatory. "What do you mean?" he said, but his smile was too wide, showing too many teeth. That's when Tony screamed. The truth, Tony wasn't screaming because of something he saw. He was screaming because of something he remembered. "That's not David," he shouted, backing away from our group leader. "David fell down a ravine yesterday morning while we were exploring. I saw him fall. I saw his body at the bottom." The thing that had been leading us through the forest stopped pretending to smile. Its face began to change, features shifting and rearranging themselves. The human facade melted away to reveal something with David's general size and build, but with the head and legs of a goat. It stood upright like a man, but its legs bent backward at the knees like an animal's. Its eyes were yellow and horizontal pupilled, and when it opened its mouth, I could see rows of sharp teeth designed for tearing meat. "You should not have come here," it said in David's voice, but distorted and layered with animal sounds. We ran. I don't remember much about the next few hours, just crashing through the forest, following what I hoped was the right direction back to our car. The creature followed us, sometimes running on two legs like a human, sometimes dropping to all fours and moving through the trees with impossible speed. At some point during our flight, I realized that Sarah wasn't with us anymore. Neither was Jessica. It was just Marcus, Tony, and me, running blindly through the wilderness with something inhuman hunting us. We finally reached the car as the sun was setting. Marcus fumbled with the keys while Tony and I watched the tree line, expecting the creature to emerge at any moment. We made it back to town, but the three of us never talked about what happened in those woods. The official story was that David, Sarah, and Jessica had decided to extend their camping trip and would drive back separately. When they were reported missing a few days later, we told the authorities that we had last seen them at the campsite, planning to hike to a different area. Search and rescue teams found their abandoned gear, but no trace of their bodies. The case remains unsolved. Years later, that was 12 years ago, and I've never gone camping again. But the story doesn't end there. About 5 years after the camping trip, I ran into someone who looked exactly like Sarah at a grocery store in my hometown. She approached me with a huge smile and started talking, as if we were old friends picking up a conversation from yesterday. "Jake," she said, "it's been so long. How have you been?" She looked exactly like Sarah. Same height, same hair, same face, but something about her mannerisms was slightly off. Her smile was too wide, held too long. Her laugh came at wrong moments. And her eyes had that same predatory intelligence I had seen in the creature that had impersonated David. I made an excuse and left quickly. But since then, I've had several similar encounters. People who look like David, Jessica, or Sarah showing up in my life unexpectedly. Always friendly, always trying to get close to me. Marcus moved across the country after college, but we still keep in touch. He's had similar experiences, encounters with people who look like our missing friends, but act slightly wrong. Tony wasn't so lucky. 3 years ago, he was found dead in his apartment under mysterious circumstances. The official cause of death was ruled a heart attack, but he was only 27 years old and in perfect health. The only strange detail was that his neighbors reported hearing voices from his apartment the night he died, voices that sounded like David, Sarah and Jessica, all talking at once. I'm sharing this story because I believe the creatures we encountered in those woods aren't isolated to that one location. I think they're spreading, using the identities of the people they've taken to infiltrate human communities. If you encounter someone from your past who seems slightly off, who smiles too much, laughs at the wrong times, or has that predatory look in their eyes, trust your instincts. Don't let them get close to you. Don't go anywhere alone with them, and whatever you do, don't go camping in remote wilderness areas where few people ever travel. Some places are empty for good reasons. The thing that took my friends is still out there, wearing their faces, living their lives, and I'm convinced it's looking for more people to add to its collection. Sometimes late at night, I get phone calls from numbers I don't recognize. When I answer, I hear familiar voices. David asking if I want to go camping again. Sarah wondering why I haven't returned her calls. Jessica inviting me to visit her in her new town. I always hang up immediately. But the calls keep coming. They know where I live now, and I think they're getting tired of playing games. If something happens to me, if I disappear or die under mysterious circumstances, I want people to know the truth about what had in those woods 12 years ago. The Goatman is real. It can take the form of anyone, and it's not content to stay in the wilderness anymore. It's coming to the suburbs. It's coming to the cities. It might already be someone you know. Note found with Jake's body after his apparent suicide 3 months after posting this story online. The note was written in Jake's handwriting, but friends and family insist the writing style doesn't match his personality. I was wrong about everything. David, Sarah, and Jessica are fine. They never died in the woods. I was the one who got confused, who started seeing things that weren't there. The camping trip was perfectly normal. I've been having mental health issues for years, creating elaborate fantasies about monsters and creatures. My friends have been trying to help me, checking on me, calling to make sure I'm okay. But I kept interpreting their concern as something sinister. I'm sorry for worrying everyone with my stories. I'm sorry for running away when my friends tried to reconnect with me. They were just being good friends, and I was too sick to see it. I've decided to end things before I hurt anyone else with my delusion. David, Sarah, and Jessica. If you're reading this, I'm sorry. You deserved a better friend than me. Police reported that Jake's body was found in his locked apartment with no signs of forced entry. However, neighbors reported seeing several people matching the descriptions of his deceased camping friends, entering and leaving the building on the day of his death. Security cameras malfunctioned during the relevant time period, and no footage was recovered.